วัสดีค่ะยินดีต้อนรับเข้าสู่ Bangkok Off Stage พอดแคสต์ไทยอังกฤษรายการแรกที่จะพาไปเจาะลึกแวดวงศิลปะการแสดงในกรุงเทพ
Hello and welcome to the Bangkok Offstage podcast, the first bilingual podcast on the Bangkok performing arts scene.
แอมแก้วตา
And I'm Amitha.
In episode 7 of season 4, we talked to 3 members of one of the most enduring theatre groups in Thailand, Bangkok Community Theatre, or BCT. Bonnie Zellerbach, Danny Wall, and Ric Hizon tell us what drew them to community theatre, how they managed to stay connected and very active throughout the pandemic, and what's next for this 50-year-old English-speaking community theatre. This episode is in English.ในเอพิโซด 7 ของซีซั่น 4 เราได้ไปพูดคุยกับ 3 สมาชิกของกลุ่มละครที่อยู่คู่กรุงเทพมายาวนานถึง 50 ปี Bangkok Community Theatre หรือ BCT ซึ่งประกอบด้วยอาสาสมัครชาวต่างชาติที่อาศัยอยู่ในกรุงเทพ Bonnie Zellerbach, Danny Wall และ Ric Hizon เล่าให้เราฟังถึงสิ่งที่ดึงดูดเขามาทำละครแบบ Community Theatre สิ่งที่ช่วยกระชับความสัมพันธ์ระหว่างสมาชิกช่วงวิกฤตโควิดและอนาคตของ BCT เอพิโซดนี้เป็นภาษาอังกฤษค่ะ Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Danny. And hi, Ric. Welcome to Bangkok Offstage. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. Great to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
Good to be here.
Let's begin with, so that people can the listeners can get used to your voice. Could you each introduce yourselves and tell us which role you play in the Bangkok Community Theatre? We can start with Bonnie.
So, hi, my name is Bonnie Zellerbach, and I'm currently the chair of Bangkok Community Theatre, which we lovingly refer to as BCT, Bangkok Community Theatre's mouthful. I also am in charge of the costumes and props, all the assets. They're currently stored at my house.
Wow, so, okay. Danny, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Danny, and I'm relatively newer, I think, to the BCT committee. I'm a committee member helping with the website, and most recently I'm also directing a upcoming production of Constellations that will be happening in November.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ric, go ahead.
I'm Ric Hizon. I've been with BCT kind of on and off since I was a kid. I think the first show that I did with them was back in 2001, thereabouts. So I would have been maybe 12 years old at the time. Anyway, I'm also on the committee. I am half of our social media team for BCT. Yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, I also, of course, when I get the opportunity, take part in productions and such. But most of what I'm doing at the moment is helping out with graphics, social media, and that sort of thing.
Right. Can you each tell us, I know this is not in the questions I sent you, but what do you guys do when you're not with BCT? What is your day job, basically? Bonnie, go ahead.
Well, I did work in advertising for many years, but I no longer do that, given my advanced age and condition. I actually do professional acting and voiceover work. When I can get it, but I'm mainly retired.
All right. Danny?
Well, I'm working as an international school teacher, and I teach drama and also film.
Oh, wow.
For ISB, yes, International School Bangkok.
Okay, so are you a filmmaker as well, or you mostly teach those two things?
My background is actually in animation.
Oh.
So that's stretching a long time ago, though. Currently, I'm just a teacher. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Ric?
I've been a teacher for the last while, something that I sort of fell into a few years back. At present, I'm actually transitioning into a new role as homemaker and father. We're expecting my first daughter in about a month and a half. So
congratulations.
That's exciting. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
And where are you all from originally?
I'm from the Philippines.
Oh, you're from the Philippines. Okay. How long have you been in Bangkok?
On and off about 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. And Danny?
Yeah, I'm from the US, from California.
Oh,
Yeah, but this is my second year in Bangkok, and
okay.
I've been teaching internationally in Asia for about 12 years. I
Wow,
think
okay. Where else have you been?
Also most recently in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. But I've also lived and taught in Shanghai, in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, and Tokyo as
Oh,
well.
wow, okay. Wow. And Bonnie?
I'm also American, and I've lived in Thailand for 32 years. I came here in 1991.
Wow.
So
And how did you come to be part of BCT?
I was working in advertising at the time, and there was a person, a woman that I worked with in the office who was involved with BCT. And it's actually a great story. I found her in her cubicle, hysterically crying one evening. And I said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" She was about to direct her first show for BCT. And there was a last minute crisis, and they were missing set pieces, and it was opening in just a matter of days, and she thought it was going to be a disaster. And I need a chair. I said, "Well, what kind of a chair?" I said, "An armchair." I have an armchair. You can use my armchair. It has to be a really beat up armchair. It's a really beat up armchair. It has to have a matching footstool. It has a matching footstool. So by the end of the conversation, my entire living room furniture had become the set for a production of Table Manners in 1991. That was my introduction to BCT. And then I started auditioning for shows and getting involved. And I'd never done any community theater before. I don't even know that I'd ever seen a community theater production before. So
Right. And what does it mean to you now, BCT? Because you've been with them for so long, and now you're the chairperson and someone in charge of costumes and props.
BCT is my main creative outlet. It's also one of my best conduits for meeting new people and making friends. BCT is predominantly an expat association, not entirely, but predominantly. So naturally, there's a lot of turnover. And as sad as it is to see friends go, the nice thing about BCT is every year there's an influx of new like-minded people, and it's a great way, to make new friends.
How do you become a chairperson? Is it all election?
So yeah, there's BCT structured with a committee, a minimum number of 10 on the committee. And the elections are held annually at our annual general meeting. Membership votes. It's voluntary position. We're always desperately looking for people to be on the committee.
Right.
People are generally very happy to audition and act in shows. Getting them to do other things is more difficult at times.
Okay.
It's a commitment, and people
Right.
have busy lives, and so it's hard to take on more. But yeah, both Ric and Danny, stepped up to the task. Thank goodness, and the others on the committee. So yes, it's all done by elections, and the chairman is specifically elected, and the treasurer is specifically elected.
Okay.
So you stand for those two positions because they're officers. But all the other members of the committee they just stand as a committee member. We have over time, we have recognized that we need specific skills to run the organization effectively. And so we try to get fill out the rest of the committee with people who can take on specific tasks, such as social media or website or
Right.
whatever. So we ask people to come on board taking on those jobs, but they're not actually elected to take on those jobs. They're elected to be a general committee member.
Right.
It's more than you wanted to know.
That's okay. Ric, how did you become part of BCT?
Well, I was a student at Bangkok Partner at the time when I did my first show with them. This was a long time ago when BCT was still doing shows with cast members who were minors, which stopped. When exactly did BCT stop doing that?
Well, we only ever did it when a show required minors, and so it stopped prior to the time that we actively decided to stop.
Right.
But it's been a while.
So that would have been back around 2000, 2001. And then nothing, for a really long time. Graduated high school here, went to drama school in Australia. And then a few years later, wound up back in Bangkok. And just by pure chance, they were doing a pantomime in December. It was Aladdin. And all of a sudden, the actor playing Aladdin wound up having to leave town. So Bonnie calls up Rocky, my mom, and I wind up coming in to just do a very quick audition for it, and just like that, I was back in. And I've been with BCT, been with BCT ever since. That would have been back in 2016, I believe.
But you studied theater as well in Sydney.
In Sydney, yeah.
I see. And Danny, how did you come to be part of BCT?
Well, I think I'm going to go as far back as my time in Tokyo when I started, when I was teaching there, in the sense of I discovered community theater there. And it became first just something as a fan that I would go and I would enjoy the shows, and but then becoming a member with Tokyo International Players, and being sort of a patron to them, as well as, okay, just let me help you move some chairs around and set up things, and then eventually becoming part of different casts as well. And then when I would move my location, because if my work changed or my setting changed, I found out that there were other community theaters groups in those cities as well. And
cool.
So I knew when I was moving to Bangkok, I knew kind of what I wanted to find. So it was very welcoming. It was the middle of we're at the height, I guess, of the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And I was living in Kuala Lumpur at the time, but I knew I was coming to Bangkok, and I knew I was going to want to find a community. And I reached out to Bangkok Community Theatre, even though I was not necessarily in Bangkok at the time.
Right.
And joined that. We were doing some online play readings at the time,
Right.
over Zoom. And I was able to even participate there. And then when I came to Bangkok physically, it was just very natural to come on board.
Right. Very nice. And the term community theater, because in Thailand we don't have this the equivalent really in Thai. And when we say, theater practitioners who work with communities, we think, they work with marginalized communities, the urban poor, or like the ethnic minorities, or something like that. And, using theater more as a tool for empowerment. But in the English-speaking world, I think that's a very different thing. Bonnie, can you start with that? Because even you said before you joined BCT, you were like, what is community theater? You had never seen a production by them or anything like that. For you, what did it mean? And did it really surprise you? Or what did you like about community theater that you decided to stick with it?
The term community theater simply means that everybody's volunteer. They are unpaid. The actors are unpaid. The directors are unpaid. The stage manager is unpaid. Professional theater, you're paid. That is literally the difference. However, because another word for community theater is amateur theater, or AMDRAM, amateur dramatics, which literally means lover of theater. So people who do community theater do it for love. They don't do it for a career. They're not doing it to pay the rent. They're doing it for the love of it. Now, some people who do that are not very good, and I think my idea prior, I know Rick and Danny are laughing, my idea prior to ever seeing a community theater production, and maybe I did see one as a child, I don't know, but my impression was that it was going to be a bunch of people who didn't know how to act, doing a bad job. That's what I thought community theater was going to be, which is why I had a negative impression of it. And I went to see my first BCT show simply to support my friend who was directing it. I expected to have to, plaster a smile on my face and say, good job. But they were amazing. I have seen professional productions that were not as good as that production that BCT put on. And I mean, that's so Now, what do I think? I know how good. I will go see a community theater production anywhere. I'll do a little research and find out how well regarded the organization is. But I have now learned, I've been educated that it simply means unpaid. It means no more than that.
Okay. And Ric, I mean, you went on to study theater. So what does it mean for you? And like, do you have the impression now, like Bonnie did, or?
Absolutely, absolutely. There is this idea, this very prevalent idea that anything done by amateurs is not going to be as good as something done by professionals.
Right.
And certainly through my experience working with BCT, I know that that's simply not true. I have seen professional shows in the theater capitals of the world that I can say are worse than the things that BCT has put on, are more banal, more basic, essentially. And it's the fact that people are doing it for love, and we're not necessarily looking for, we're not necessarily looking to make, huge profits. Obviously, we want to be financially sustainable. We always aim to break even with our shows, but that's not ever really the real priority. It's about providing that outlet to our members that lets them explore their creativity, lets them have an opportunity to get on stage, and to be a part of this, to be a part of this family, and to do, and to just really enjoy themselves creating something. And that's something that's it's hard to find opportunities, hard for expats to find the opportunities to do the kind of work and to engage with with the kind of community that we offer. The only thing that we don't offer is pay, but they'll happily but people will happily be a part of something just because they love it.
And that's why you return. I mean, even after, do you ever want to eventually do professional theater or anything like that?
Absolutely. Whenever the opportunity to do something in a professional context comes up, I take it. But with BCT, there's I find that the kinds of shows that I'm talking pre-pandemic here, because things right now, I'm sure we're going to talk about this. Things right now are a bit weird. But the kinds of shows that were being done pre-pandemic, we were looking at what was the last thing? I think the last show that I did was a William Inge play Bus Stop. But there was a musical that I was in back in 2017, I want to say. 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is just such a fun, such a delightful musical. And not only was it a great show that got really well received when we ran it, but the people that I met working on that show, the people that I worked with, we actually still, even though only I think 4 of us are still left in Thailand, we still catch up with each other on Facebook. We still check in on each other. And I think that's really the most beautiful thing about particularly amateur dramatics, is this sense, this much more meaningful sense of community, because we're not, it's not a professional thing. We're not really looking to one up each other or anything. We're really looking to work collaboratively to make wonderful art.
Yeah. And you, Ric, you've been in so many community theaters in Asia. Are they all similar, or? Oh no, sorry, we're not Ric. Danny, I'm so sorry, Danny.
I think that same spirit that both Ric and Bonnie are talking about is definitely prevalent throughout the different places that I've been to, and it starts with that both that love of theater, but also this desire to make art collaboratively, as Ric was saying, and Bonnie alluded to earlier. This is our expression. This is our opportunity to put art out there in the world and enjoy it. It's a long process to do, and we are always appreciative of the audiences that come and want to support us and engage with us that way. That feeling is I think constant in any of these community theaters, regardless of the city.
Nice. And Bonnie, could you tell us a bit more about how, maybe a bit of history of the BCT and how it operates apart from, the committee itself, and how you guys come up with ideas and things like that, or, agree on which productions to do, how many productions per year, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay, so BCT is celebrating its 50th anniversary. We were formed in 1972, prior to my time in Thailand.
Yes.
But there were two pre-existing organizations, a British group and an American group. It was like the British Dramatic Society and American Community Theatre, I think, something like that. Anyhow, they were apparently, as the BCT lore goes, they were always poaching each other's talent when they were doing shows, and so they finally agreed to combine forces and create Bangkok Community Theatre. So that's how the group came about. As I said, we've got 10 committee members. We stage pandemic in a non-pandemic world, about 3 to 4 productions a year. That's the goal, but it all depends on volunteers. I mean, if nobody steps up and says they want to direct something, then we don't have anything. So if it really depends on what kind of a community we have supporting us at any period in time. I know a lot of organizations in other parts of the world will plan a year in advance. They'll do one children's show and one drama and one musical and one, I don't know, murder mystery or something. They will try to plan out something for everyone. We have tried to plan a year in advance, but the fact of the matter is that many of our members are transient, and people will commit to things in January for November, and by November they're no longer living in the country.
Oh yeah.
So we really don't plan more than 6 months out at a max, and that we have to do that because we've learned if we do anything else, we end up having to change the plans constantly. But it also means we're always kind of scrambling for the next thing, which is not an ideal situation to be in. The committee doesn't come up with the productions, although the current one, Danny is on the committee, and he had a production he wanted to do, so that is the one that we're doing. But we ask for submissions from the membership, or could even be somebody who's not a member. If they submit a play to us that they would like to direct or produce, then we read it first as a committee, decide if it's something we think would be good for our community, both in terms of the audience and in terms of our players. And most things are. I mean, maybe the only things I think we would turn down would be things that were, I don't know, bad, just really bad scripts.
Right.
Or perhaps offensive in some way. I don't know. But if it's a good play, chances are, we would be excited to do it. And then we would help whoever brought it to us. We would help advertise the need for producers, directors, the other people to fill out the production team, because obviously the show can't take the next step unless you have the key production team roles filled. And that's usually the critical junction for any BCT show, is making sure we can put together. And getting that team for any show means you have to find a certain number of people who are as passionate about that show as you are, to then be willing to put the time into it to take it to the next step. So
you guys audition?
So that happens after.
Okay.
Right. So you've got to have the show. You've got to agree on the show. You have to have a budget that makes sense. You have to find a venue. And venues are very hard to come by in Bangkok.
Right.
After all of that is done, and get the rights. Sometimes we can't get the rights. Sometimes the rights are available in other countries, but they're not available in Thailand. Got all of that. Then we announce auditions to the general public.
Okay.
And we never precast. Auditions are always open to the general public. The show gets cast and then goes into rehearsal, which is where Danny is right now, with his production of Constellations.
Okay. And where do you guys get the money? Sorry, because do you sell tickets as well, or how do you come up with the money?
We have money in the bank that we earned from some shows. Our main goal is to break even on shows or make just a little extra for admin expenses. So we sell tickets, but frankly, most of the time we can't charge a high enough ticket price to cover our expenses because theater rental and lighting rental and sound rental has become so expensive. We have to get sponsors. So that's a whole nother thing because if you had to charge, I don't know, 2,000 baht a ticket to cover your costs, people probably aren't going to pay that for community theater. So then you still don't end up with that money in hand.
Right.
So
who are the audience do you find of BCT? Have they changed? The audiences, have they changed over time, or it depends on the production? For example, who you cast in the production, for example.
Both. I mean, if it depends on what the production is. So, for example, in January, we did The Emperor's New Clothes, which was a show specifically designed for children 4 to 9 years old and their parents. So it was little children and their parents. Ric was in it, and it obviously that makeup was a very English-speaking, multinational audience of little children and their parents.
Right.
And if we do a big pantomime, that would be a similar type of audience. If we did, say, Shakespeare, that is likely to be a much older audience, although we might get school groups of high school students coming to that, but certainly we wouldn't get anyone under the age of 12. And it would more likely be more expatriate because of the familiarity of Shakespeare and the difficulty of the language. So comedies, musicals, children's show, they all draw different audiences.
I mean, just to add to that, I mean, one of the other big ways that we kind of expand into different demographics, different markets, is through the people who are involved in the shows. Because obviously, the best way to get someone in there is for someone who's actually either acting in it, or is one of the designers for it, or the director, or the producer, or whoever, to just grab some of their friends and say, hey, we're doing this show, come and get a ticket. And that's, that is actually one of the ways that we've been able to expand into sort of different territory in terms of our audiences and eventually our membership in the past.
And how much does a ticket for BCT production goes for?
Depends on the show. We budget, but we try to keep it as low as possible.
Right.
The Emperor's New Clothes, was it 300 baht? 200 baht?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
I can't remember now. And that included making a craft beforehand. I think maybe it was 280. Anyhow, but then if we're doing something in a big theater, I think the minimum price for that is going to be 500 baht, and it may be 800 baht simply because of the cost of the theater rental.
Right. And big theater, which venue has been the biggest you've been in?
The very biggest theater that we performed in at the time was called the Bangkok Playhouse, but now it's a huge building called Creative Industries on Petbury Road.
Yes.
But it has 3 theaters inside. One is the huge, I think now it's a 900-seat theater, and then EMSA, right? Bangkok Playhouse is now M Theater, and that's the biggest venue that we've ever played.
Okay, so it's pretty big. Okay, and you said earlier that you no longer cast minors. What happened to that? Why do you no longer work with children?
So it's not that we wouldn't. It is possible that a show would come along that had a child in it, and we would then consider whether we wanted to do the show or not. But as a rule, we have decided we would prefer not to work with minors, simply because we don't feel we can offer the child protection that they require. If you look at other organizations around the world, there's a lot of concern about how children are safeguarded, particularly in community activities. Parents drop them off expecting that their children will be safe and that somebody's going to keep an eye out for them. obviously we're a big organization. We might have one person rehearsing with dancers over here and somebody else rehearsing with somebody else over here. We can't keep an eye on the children at every minute of every hour of every day. And we felt we were not able to keep to the standard of child safeguarding because we simply don't have enough volunteers or a small group.
Makes
so,
sense.
you know, if we were a bigger group, we might be able to. I mean, you guys, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would say that I think that is certainly a concern. And some of it, though, is also a basically logistical kind of thing. Being amateur theater, we're not professional actors. So for a lot of us, this is, you know, we fit it into our schedule wherever it can. So it might be a late rehearsal. It might be spread out over several weeks. So because of the variability of the schedules and where we might have to be for locations of venue for rehearsals or not, I think it's just too
complicated,
variable. Too complicated sometimes to add this other little random thing there. So keeping our focus on what we can provide well, I think is probably part of the decision.
What are some of the BCT traditions and regular activities? I read that you guys have done Fringe Festival and all of that. Are those still going on? I mean, I understand that now it's still pandemic time. So can you talk a bit about that?
Well, I mean, yeah, we had done regular annual, an annual Fringe Festival, which that was happening earlier on, I think through the 2000s, and then it stopped and then it came back again. So it has been kind of an on again, off again sort of thing. But for the few years leading up to the pandemic, there had been one, I think, every year. The pandemic obviously was a big upset to any kind of live events. We actually did sort of do a semi-fringe type thing. It was called BCT Shorts, which can actually be found on our YouTube channel. Just a little plug there. And it was a way for our members to still be able to engage in that same kind of Fringe Festival activity, putting together small shows with low risk. The only difference was that obviously everything had to be filmed instead. And this went through 3 different iterations, kind of adjusting and tweaking the formula as it went. So the first one was the only stipulation was it's going to have to be filmed, recorded, and then uploaded. And the quality was just so variable because the different ways of producing the different shorts were so variable. So the following one, we did 3, I believe. We did just 3, yeah. So the following edition was put forth with the idea that it should all be done, everything should be filmed in Zoom, so that we have this very concrete structure that everybody's going to have to stick to. Playing into this whole Zoom theater, Zoom theater thing that came about during the pandemic. Then of course the issue we ran into there was that some of the material was the material didn't feel uniform. And we also felt like people didn't necessarily want to be dealing with heavy drama, heavy subjects, and some of the scripts that were pitched that wound up being shot down were extremely dark and extremely heavy. We're like, look, we're living through a time when everybody's locked inside. It's all very apocalyptic. I think we could use a bit of light in our lives. So the third and final edition of BCT Shorts was all has to be done in Zoom, has to be recorded, and has to be a comedy. After that, we might have done another one, but then restrictions started easing. So it was like, no, it's time to actually do this in a real space with real people sitting in front of us instead of all this stuff around screens.
And you guys can you talk a bit about Fringe Festival? And usually, how does it work? Is it just anyone submitting, and how long does it go on for?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's a fairly open pitch. When we decide to do a Fringe, we just begin publicizing it to the membership, and to anyone who'd be interested in directing a piece. Fringe for BCT has typically been sort of it served a couple of purposes. One is that it's kind of a proving ground for people who may not have directed shows for us in the past, and so it's a way for them to for us to kind of test drive them and see, can you put something together, and is it going to be fun to watch? The other is that because there are, say, maybe 8, 9, 10, 12 little shows happening, it's great for recruitment.
Right.
The auditions we have, like when we've done a Fringe in the past, the auditions it's a much bigger turnout,
Right.
than even when we do a panto or a musical.
Can I just clarify?
Sure.
A Fringe festival in other countries often means that people bring a ready-made show and perform it at the festival. BCT's Fringe Festival is all within BCT. The directors say they want to direct, and we give them the parameters within which they'll have to work, and they agree or they don't agree, and then so they do it or they don't, and then they choose scripts which we have to approve, so that there's no lèse majesté or whatever. We make sure that the scripts are okay, and then we hold group auditions. So it's all done
very
within
different.
it's within the BCT umbrella, but it is as Ric says, it could be 13 different one-act plays or a sketch or a song, or that lots of different stuff can be part of one of our Fringes, and it's usually just 2 nights. That's usually what we do.
Yeah, I think that's the other difference, is that the volume of shows and the length of the shows as well. Whereas at a Fringe festival, you're looking at something that's kind of you're looking at fuller pieces.
So many,
and you're looking at a lot of them over a long period of time. With BCT, we'll book a large space for a weekend, maybe 2 weekends, and every performance is going to have the same lineup.
Right. Don't you guys
only have
Sorry, go
maybe
ahead.
like 2 hours. I was just going to say that usually it's about maybe 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours total runtime that we do at every show.
Okay. And what about, don't you guys have cabaret or something like that, or is that just an online thing? Did I see it on your Facebook or something? No.
I'm not sure what you're thinking of.
Okay,
we have
maybe
a club night. We have club night.
Yes. I think maybe that.
Club nights are once a month. They are participatory evenings, and we try to get our members and people who aren't members to come in and be guest hosts. So we've done a makeup workshop. We've done improv tips. We've done theater. What's the word I want?
Stage combat.
Stage combat, that's the one I wanted. Stage combat.
Okay.
We just had our club night for September, Friday, and it was a quiz. It was a quiz night, and a lot of it was theatrically. It wasn't entirely theatrically related, but a lot of it was. It was a really, really fun night.
Right.
But we try very hard to make our club night something not just a lecturer talking at people, but getting people up and moving and or participating in some way.
Right. Bonnie, you said earlier that the community is so transient because you really don't know who's coming, who's going when, and all of that. How do you, apart from club night, for example, and doing productions, do you guys do other things? Or as a chairperson, do you do anything else to help foster a sense of community, to kind of keep people together, or kind of drum up the enthusiasm to do productions?
I think in terms of the existing membership, we have a private BCT members group on Facebook where people can talk to each other, and you asked before about people doing professional work. A lot of our members also do professional work, and we encourage them to post if they were in a film or whatever, to share that with the other members, so we can all cheer each other on, or to also go see them perform in some other production. There are other groups in Bangkok, there's other places that do theater, and we try to support them as well. So that's one way. We also have a weekly newsletter that goes to our membership. I think in terms of building membership beyond what we've got right now, that's actually a really important focus for BCT because the pandemic has shrunk our membership. We've, Rick mentioned before that we get a lot of our members from auditions for shows. Well, we haven't been doing live shows for 3 years because of the pandemic. So we haven't had auditions. So that main way of bringing people in, and also people coming to see the shows who might not have known about it and then joining up because, now they know about it. None of that has happened. So our membership, I think, is smaller now than perhaps it's been in the last 20 years. And so that's something we really have to look at. And I don't have an answer for that yet, but that is something that we have to work on.
And I mean, as well as that, through the pandemic, we lost a lot of really key members who were very, very active in BCT. And that it's difficult to replace someone who's been with the organization, who served on the committee for a few years, and knows the system, knows the people, and then all of a sudden they wind up getting a job somewhere else, or decide that one of the things with the pandemic is a lot of people realize, what if this happens again? I don't want to get stuck away from my home country, and so they wind up going back. And so we're in at the moment, in terms of membership, a really big transitionary period, like a full-on changing of the guard, really.
Wow. Okay. And how did you guys deal with the pandemic? I mean, Danny, you came in 2019, or you came during the pandemic, right? Or right before?
I did during, yes. It was interesting time to transition into a new country, for sure. But at the time, there was also something that was very regular that BCT did, which was the online play readings. And at the time, they really did help build that community and connect people, and it was a very regular thing for a while. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it was just a lot of connecting over there. I think even club nights were virtual for a long time. I think just this last one we did was the first one that was a live event. So transitioning into Zoom for most of the stuff has been the way we've been operating. The Fringe that you talked about, and these other club nights and other events. We sort of just shifted into being virtual like this for most of it. Yeah.
And Bonnie, how do you deal as a chairperson?
My job as a chairperson is no more than any other committee members in terms of this. We all share the weight of keeping the organization going equally. I think I'm just there to spearhead conversations more than anything else.
And make the decisions that none of us want to.
Yeah. But actually, I just remembered when Danny was talking about the online play readings. So they were happening. They started in April of 2020 when we were on lockdown, and we did them once a week. So we were having an online play reading once a week. We did, 40 some odd play readings in 2020, and another, I think, 50 some odd in 20, or maybe 48 in 2021. And we're still doing them now, but now they're on a bi-monthly basis. Although they may be coming to a close because people have gotten back to their normal lives.
Right.
But we did that, and also in 2020 when we were on lockdown, we started doing online watch parties once a week. I think the play readings were Tuesdays and the watch parties were Thursdays, I think. And we would find copies of shows that had been videoed, like good plays,
good quality,
musicals, right? And we found this site that you could log into, and it's, I don't even know, you'd all watch it at the same time. It's like screening it on Zoom, although we didn't have that technology at the time. The technology for online sharing has, improved dramatically over the last 2 years. So it was pretty rough in April of 2020. Wow. But so we would get together and we would watch, movie, and Andrew Lloyd Webber made a lot of his musicals free online. And so we would get together and we would watch those. And so we would always publicize that to the membership, that here's where we can all meet. And, you'd get that little sort of chat window down the side. So you'd be at home, but you'd all be watching the same thing, and you could sing along at home, and you could text on the side, that's my favorite song, or whatever.
What was that experience like for all of you? I mean, weekly play reading, seeing each other so much, and plus watch parties and everything. What was that like for you guys to be online together so much?
Gosh,
Well,
it was liberating. Like
Oh,
it was
really?
wonderful. I mean, because everybody was so hungry to do something. We had been stuck, by April. Because I was actually in the Philippines at the time. When did Bangkok go into lockdown in 2020?
March?
We went
Around
March.
Okay,
March,
so around
yeah.
the same time, and and that's the thing. Like people were just absolutely stir crazy, and especially those who really loved doing things with BCT. You'd been cut off from that outlet, and so there was it was like I certainly was extremely grateful that BCT was doing these weekly play readings, was taking the club nights online, was doing these watch parties. It was great. I think the real challenge where things got tricky, the twisted irony of it is that the thing we were all scared of, like how are we going to stay relevant and how are we going to stay active and how are we going to keep this community alive through the pandemic, that actually was the easy part. Transitioning online, making use of the tools that were available, that was the easy part. The hard part is what's happening right now, and the kind of waking up from what feels like a bit of a dream, and things are all getting started again, and we don't quite know where BCT fits into the new normal as it's taking shape.
Mm. And Danny, how was it for you? Did you have the same experience? Like, was it liberating for you as well?
I think it was it was very I just can't echo what Rick was saying. Especially being new to the country itself, but being able to find like-minded people very easily, and being able to feel that you have even a virtual connection is very powerful. So yeah, I just echo everything Rick was saying.
And Bonnie?
Maybe a little less liberating for me because I was running the weekly play readings and watch parties, so it was a lot of work.
I think Bonnie had the most costumes though when people did start accentuating their characters with some costumes.
Yeah, and our play readings started off very, very simple, and we didn't even know who was going to be interested, how many people would show up. And then after a month goes by, I go, okay, there's a regular crowd, and people who didn't know, they'd never met each other before, but you start to realize, that person's really funny, and that person's, because we kept getting new people. I mean, the old people knew each other, but new people, and they would bring different skill sets. And so, I'd assign certain roles to certain people because I think, I bet they could do, a really good job with that. And then I can't remember who it was the first time, but somebody, or maybe it was Paul, one of our members, his character, it said in the script that he dropped his teeth. He was supposed to be an old man and his teeth were supposed to fall out. Well, unbeknownst to me, the ex-chairman of BCT has false teeth, apparently, and he let his teeth drop out purposely when the characters did, and everybody was falling off their chairs in the Zoom. In the Zoom call. And then I think that maybe the next week somebody else brought a hat and somebody else brought it. And so all of a sudden the play readings became more and more theatrical over time. And yes, since the costumes are at my house, I had access to them.
I wanted to ask you, how do you end up with all the costumes and all the props at your house? And what does that look like?
We were very fortunate for many years to have different moving companies store our costumes for us for free.
Okay.
And we have a huge amount. I mean, we have, 40 cabinets and 100 boxes of costumes. We have lots and lots. Sadly, a few years back, it's probably 9 years or so back, the company that was storing our costumes at that time apparently had been leasing the property, and the lease was up. I was away. It was at Christmas time, and I was away in the States, and I get an email saying you have to move everything out in the next week. And I wasn't even coming back for 2 weeks. So, make a long story short, they gave us a grace period, or the new owners gave us a grace period. But on the 10th of January, I was back in Thailand for 2 days. I had to move everything out of that storage. And the only place I could find that could physically store our things was my house, because once upon a time, the people who I mean, I rent this house, but it's got a big outdoor sort of garage area. Somebody had run an import-export business out of this house once upon a time, and it was my children's play area, but I think they were 14 or 15 years old at the time and they weren't using it anymore. So all the costumes and everything went in there. And we have searched for a new home for them, because having them at my house is not ideal for many reasons, but most importantly for public access for the rest of the committee. That's tricky. But we have so much. It's until we can find somebody who'll store it for us for free, we can't afford to rent a place big enough to access it, is the problem.
Oh, wow. That's so crazy.
So that's why it's at my house.
All right. Fingers crossed for you finding a free place to store them.
Thank you.
What are some of your upcoming projects? Maybe Danny could tell us about that, because you're directing. This is going to be the first production, in-person production, right?
Well, I think we could credit The Emperor's New Clothes as our first production. So that was in January of this year. No.
Oh, right.
Yes. Yeah. No. It was January of 2022, and then we were going to do a production this May, the Pirates of Chemo, which sadly Omicron hit, and we were performing in the Queen's Circuit Center for Breast Cancer, and it was deemed unsafe to bring an audience in there, and absolutely understandable. It just wasn't, post Songkran, the COVID levels really surged again. So we put the show on hold, hoping that we would be able to do it this fall, but actors and directors' schedule are not matching up this fall. So perhaps early next year, but at the moment it's on hold indefinitely. So Danny's will be the second.
All right. Go ahead, Dan.
The play is called Constellations. It's a play by Nick Payne. And it debuted maybe 10 years ago, 2012, in London. And it's a very simple play. It tells the story of a couple, just two people and their lives together. The tricky part is that we witness their stories through many different multiverses. So we see them get together, but then we see them not get together. We see them, split up, but then we don't see them split up. And so we kind of take their journey of life on what it might be, on what it could be, and it's a very heartwarming. It's at times tragic, at times funny, but ultimately it's a simple story, a simple love story. So that's what we're aiming for.
Why did you choose this play for this time?
Well, I mean, the story itself is very powerful, and I think that there's some, like, I just think the world itself is just kind of trying to think about, well, what are the possibilities of life? Like, there's this thing that we can do, but there's also this thing we can do. And what if life looks like this? And what if life looks like that? So thematically, I think there's something that we really want to explore and understand. And I think this play helps us do that. And just we're also mindful though of the physical restrictions of trying to do live theater again. So it's a very small play. And it's a moderate running time for a small audience, and so we're keeping it very simple, very low maintenance, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. To see what happens. Yeah.
And where is it going to be at?
We have a very friendly restaurant, The Garage, who's going to help host us with their event space that's above their restaurant.
Okay, lovely.
So, that's on Sukhumvit near Thonglor area.
So. Okay, wonderful. Any other upcoming productions or events that we should know of this year? You guys are keeping it low because of COVID, just in case.
I think I mentioned.
I think maybe Bonnie, you can mention I mean, it's a yearly tradition to have a Christmas something. So
Yeah, well, we hope to have a Christmas party. Yes, as you know, COVID allowing. But I think I mentioned earlier we don't usually plan more than a couple of months at a time. So right now we don't have anything past Constellations in terms
Okay.
of actual productions.
Okay.
And I mean, given that one of the shows that was ready to go on just wound up having to get
know.
cancelled, I think everyone's being kind of cautious about
Right.
whether or not we really can commit or to putting something on. It really has to be. You have to be. It's a weird balance of having to be extremely passionate about it and also being willing to let it go in the event that you can't do it.
That's true.
Yeah, and The Pirates of Chemo was the second show we had to cancel. We were in production with the complete works of William Shakespeare abridged in March, and we were in our final dress rehearsal. The set was built. We were in the theater. Whatever that was, it was the 15th of March, something
2020,
like that. Yeah, that March 2020. The 15th of March, I think, was our last. Anyhow, we shut the show down, I think, on Tuesday, and Bangkok lockdown started on Saturday. So we might have been able to, do one or two performances before the lockdown happened, but the news of COVID was scary at that time, and we made the decision not to go ahead because we thought it was not responsible given what we heard about this virus coming. So we had hoped to be able to restage that, but now there's only two of us still in Bangkok who are in that cast. So,
Okay.
that is unfortunately what happens if you don't get a show in its time slot. Often it's not a matter of just doing it a little later, it's having to re-rehearse the whole thing because of so many cast changes that have to happen. So it's so as Rick says, the ability to be passionate and yet let go, it's a fine balance to walk.
Understandable. And I know you guys are being cautious right now, but what if you can just imagine any kind of future for BCT? What future do you imagine for BCT? We can start with Bonnie.
Oh, well, I've been watching BCT for 32 years, and and as I said, it is 50 years old. So I would hope that 50 years from now, that there are people still getting together to do BCT shows, that BCT is still making audiences laugh, that BCT is still making audiences think. And I think that's the best thing, isn't it, when they come out of a show and they end up having a dialogue with the other people that they watch the show with. That's sparked conversation. I believe in theater. I believe that theater is an art form that is not going to die out.
Right.
I think it's going to continue. I think it provides a need different from movie theaters. I think movie theaters maybe, but I think live theater still has its very special place. It's a different animal.
Right.
So yeah, I imagine on my good days that's what BCT will be doing 50 years from now.
Nice. And Danny?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that again, coming in to this as the newest member represented here, that I've only seen it in its sort of virtual phase, more or less, and being able to just kind of emerge, from the inside and open those doors and see the bright, sunlight again, like that kind of picture is what I'm seeing, and looking forward to. Yeah, bigger productions, better variety, like more bringing the community into it, as it's meant to be. I think is where we're going.
Any future production in mind that you like, this is your dream play to do? Can you name a few if you don't mind?
I'm not going to put that out into the universe yet. Until short-term steps. Yeah, Constellation is certainly one of them, but we'll have to wait and see.
Wonderful. Thank you. Rick, go ahead.
Well, I mean, when it comes to future productions, I do want to. I feel obligated to give a shout out to our dearly departed, very recently deceased brother to our family, Mr. Cian Green, who was such an integral part of this community. He passed over the summer from a blood infection. He was extremely passionate about putting together just really adventurous shows and providing experiences that people would not have thought they'd ever have at the theater. Bonnie was part of one of his I think was that the last live show he did for BCT, Shipwrecked? Yeah.
Yes, Shipwrecked was the last thing he directed.
Because although he made the movie, that was the last thing. Oh, that's right. Yeah,
but he made his movie.
Yeah, he did a film, which was the first, I believe, the first film that the BCT produced.
Proper film.
Wow, okay.
Not a Zoom film.
Not horror. Hard to pin down what exactly it was. What exactly to classify it as. Not a horror, kind of a comedy film called Go. And he was just such a wealth of ideas. One show that he really wanted to do that I was extremely excited about was a Clockwork Orange. The stage adaptation of it that Burgess himself wrote was something that he'd been talking to everyone about, and we're like, this sounds incredible. It sounds risky. It sounds incredibly ballsy, but it could be such fun to watch, such fun to be in. In terms of what the future is going to hold for BCT, I think that really depends on how our feet land when we hit the ground and the dust settles. We're in a stage, as I said, of probably one of the biggest transitions that we've gone through. The one thing that was really encouraging to see was the number of new faces at the auditions for Constellations, which means that we are still tapping into people who have not been a part of this community before. They seemed really happy to be there and to have the opportunity to be a part of it. And the level of talent, the level of talent that you see in just random people who seemingly walk in from the street is really surprising.
Nice.
I mean, I would say that at that audition we had how many were there, Danny? Like what, 10-ish thereabouts? It wasn't a huge turnout, but I would say that absolutely none of them were duds. Like you could see each and every one of them. Like even if you'd lost your first two picks, you could have gone, okay, well we'll go with our backup, and and the level of talent would still have been enough to make something happen. It's not for lack of a talent pool, because the talent is out there. People just constantly surprise me when I see what they're able to bring out. It's a combination of rebuilding our reputation after, because one of the things with going online, we did bring in a lot of new people, but a lot of the people who were engaging with the play readings, with the shorts, were actually old members of BCT who had left Bangkok. Okay. And it was a really lovely reunion.
Nice.
But obviously that doesn't really help us now that things are getting started again. So I think the future is going to depend more than anything on the new demographic, the new membership base of BCT, which is still gradually building itself up, as well as and that's what's going to help us kind of rebuild or redesign the brand, the reputation, whatever you want to call it. And at this point in time, I don't think any of us know exactly how that's going to shake out. I mean, I'm really excited to see what does happen, but cautious at the same time.
No, it does sound exciting. And can you, just to end, can you tell us where to follow you, website, social media accounts, and of course, can you repeat again when Constellation is going to be, where it's going to be, and how you can buy tickets and follow the production?
Right. Yeah. So we're on Facebook. If you search for Bangkok Community Theatre, should be the first thing that pops up. We also post to the groups, to events groups, nightlife groups, lifestyle groups, catering to predominantly Bangkok expats, because that's always been the bulk of both our membership and our audiences. Although that said, we have been seeing more and more locals, especially younger. One thing that I would say about the direction of the future, just to go back a bit, is that we've been seeing younger and younger people becoming a part of this organization, which I think is it's such a good thing to see. But yeah, we're on Facebook. We post to some of the groups, and we have our own page. Just search Bangkok Community Theatre, and there we are.
Yeah, BangkokCommunityTheatre.com is our website. It's probably the best place. Also, with Facebook, Instagram to get up-to-date information. Constellations is going to be in November 18th, 19th, and the 20th at the garage in Sukhumvit 33. But the best thing to do is just to wait for the announcements and to get flyers as we post them in the next couple of months. So yeah.
And I must say the website is really great because it, as an archive, I think it's really wonderful because you guys have been around for so long and you can really find everything there, which is really, really nice. And do you guys have Instagram or anything like that? Or Twitter?
Yes, and we are also on Instagram. Again, Bangkok. The handle I believe is at Bangkok Community Theatre. Twitter, we are not on Twitter.
Okay,
we are not on Twitter yet. We found that it doesn't really. What we can publicize on Facebook, people are going to read on Facebook. So it just seems kind of redundant, I guess.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, for people who are interested in maybe getting to know a little bit more about BCT, but don't want to commit. People can come to a club night just as a guest. And so 100 baht if you come as a guest. Club nights are free to members, but they're 100 baht for other people. So that's a way of kind of going, okay, who are these people? I mean, you won't see everybody, but you'll see whoever decided, to show up that night, and you get to participate in whatever that month's activity is. And the club nights and the play readings, and of course, auditions and news of ticket sales for Constellations will all be done as event pages on BCT's Facebook page. So that and also our website. But I think the website's not as immediate. It's more of a, it gets changed maybe once a month or once every 3 weeks, whereas the Facebook gets updated constantly with whatever the latest information is. And so they can find out what's going on this week for club night, this week for play reading, this week for whatever, and then go, I want to try that, and RSVP and come along.
Right. Thank you so much, guys. It was so great meeting all of you, and this was such a lovely conversation. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Amita.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck with Constellations and everything else. Take good care.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe.
Bye. Thank you.
Bangkok Offstage is created, hosted, and edited by Gattaket Bungkan and Amita Amranand. The intro and outro tracks are Quicksand by Wild Light and Probably Shouldn't by Jay Lang.